On today's show, Josh Christopher being shut down for the remainder of Houston Rockets Summer League, how that opens up more minutes for other guys on the roster, and some quick thoughts on Usman Garuba not being able to participate in Summer League at all, as well as, hey, Donovan Mitchell on the chopping block in Utah. Could he be a possible trade target for the Houston Rockets? And the Rockets' newfound wing depth and who may be the odd man out of the rotation this upcoming season with so many viable wings on this Rockets roster. All of that and more coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, as well as the founder of ClutchCityControlRoom.com. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. On today's show, talk a little bit about the Rockets Summer League roster, Josh Christopher, Usman Garuba. Then, in the middle section, we will hit on Donovan Mitchell being on the chopping block up in Utah after swearing that they were trying to retool the roster around Donovan Mitchell. Looks like he may be on the way out of Utah. And could he be a potential target for the Houston Rockets? And then lastly, we'll take a look at the Rockets' wing depth and the fact that there may be a couple guys who are the odd man out of the Rockets rotation this upcoming season, and what factors we need to look at when trying to establish very early on here who may be in the rotation and who might not be. So let's start with a couple quick hitters here right out the top. Josh Christopher, done for in Summer League. He is out. Apparently, some right hip soreness is what ultimately was his undoing. The Rockets coaching staff was already debating the idea of shelving him for the rest of Summer League because of the numbers that he's been putting up across the first 3 Summer League games. Because of the right hip soreness, basically that made the decision for them. They decided to end his Summer League stint. So Josh Christopher is done for. No more Jae'Sean in Vegas Summer League. And ultimately, he had a good run in Summer League. I really wish that we would have seen a little bit more out of him. He went in, aggressive mindset, aggressive mentality. Absolutely. That's what he needs to do. That's what he needs to be on the basketball floor. But at the same time, and I said this right after game 1 of Rockets Summer League, is I wish that he would have gone out with more of the mentality to create for his teammates than to go out there and force his own buckets. But I do think that at the NBA level, that's going to be who he is, right? He's going to be a spark plug off the bench. He's going to be somebody who can come in and be instant offense, that sixth man type right off the Rockets bench. And defensively, I really did feel like he made his presence felt quite a bit more in the final 2 games than he did in the first game against the Orlando Magic. And that's going to be the other area of Josh's game that he can use to his advantage, right? He's got such a great NBA size body, right? 6'5", 210, 215, right? Like he can make life hell for other players on the basketball court when he chooses to do so, when he's locked in defensively. And I think we saw that in games 2 and 3 against the OKC Thunder and against the San Antonio Spurs. Josh was much more impactful on the defensive side of the basketball. So it was a nice little stint for Josh in Vegas Summer League. But ultimately what this does is it opens up a lot more opportunities for guys like Jae'Sean to continue to shine in Summer League. It opens up more opportunities for Ty Washington. Those two are predominantly going to be handling the basketball now moving forward, with Josh Christopher no longer in the Rockets lineup rotation, no longer kind of carrying the offense for stretches of the game for the Houston Rockets. And so that'll again, give an opportunity for Jae'Sean, for Ty, for them to kind of showcase themselves a little bit more, maybe open up some minutes for Trevor Hudgens across these final 2 games. Again, the Rockets will play super late Thursday night against the Portland Trailblazers, and then they have one more game on either Saturday or Sunday. Those games are still TBD, as the 5th game in Las Vegas Summer League is always scheduled super last minute, but they'll play one more time on Saturday or Sunday. So the Rockets do have 2 more games effectively that they'll be playing. Right now, I'm not 100% sure if we are guaranteed Jabari, Tari, and Ty in these last 2 games. Haven't heard anything to the contrary about any of them being shut down for the Trailblazers game. So fingers crossed, hopefully they all still play so that we can continue to get a really good look at these Rockets rookies and kind of seeing what the Rockets have with them. Last thing here, is Usman Garuba, who was arguably past the Rockets like draftees, right? He was going to be, actually maybe even more. I was maybe even more excited to watch Usman Garuba play than I was for Tari Eason or Ty Washington, at least before Summer League started, just because he's the guy that really hasn't gotten a ton of run on this Rockets roster, right? Like he's been, consistently dealing with injuries and dealing with being behind guys in the depth chart. And we really haven't gotten a quality look at what he can bring to the table. And I know that this injury was really difficult for him to be sidelined. He was really looking forward to getting out there in Summer League and playing with his teammates and really showcasing what he's been working on the last few months. But I do wonder, right? Like, with Usman Garuba, these injuries, first it was the wrist, now it's the ankle, at some point, right, the best ability is availability. And it does seem like, I'm not saying he's injury prone, right, but it seems like there's this recurring trend. And ultimately, with where the Rockets are at, Usman Garuba is still very fortunate that they haven't gone out and signed or acquired another big man to have legitimately behind Alperen Sengun. Eric Holman has been kind of impressive in Vegas Summer League, but if you were to throw Eric Holman on a 2-way deal right now, he's still not getting minutes ahead of Usman Garuba. So I think Garuba has kind of lucked out and that the Rockets haven't signed another big who would be ahead of him in the depth chart at this point just yet. Shows that they're maybe still really excited about what he can bring to the table. It's unfortunate that we didn't get to see that translate in Vegas Summer League. I'm still cautiously optimistic about what he can bring, right? He's 6'8", great size, great wingspan, the, insane defensive potential. Offensively, still kind of a question mark. We still don't know exactly what he can bring to the table offensively, and that's what I was really hoping to see in Summer League. So it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see that. But maybe the fact that the Rockets haven't gone out and acquired another big man to be, your Alp's backup, guaranteed, right? Maybe because they haven't done that, that kind of shows the confidence and the, desire to see what Usman Garuba can bring to the table this next season, backing up Alp, and the fact that the Rockets are probably going to, let's face it, they're probably going to run small ball for stretches of the game, right? If Alp's not on the floor and if Garuba's not on the floor, they're probably going to run some lineups with like Tari or Bari at the 5, or maybe even a super small ball lineup with like Jae'Sean Tate at the 5, things like that we've kind of become accustomed to seeing this Rockets team do for stretches of a basketball game, not for like half the game, but maybe 5-10 minutes here and there. When Alp's on the bench, if he's playing 28-30 minutes a night, then that's maybe something we can kind of anticipate and expect moving forward. So just some quick thoughts on Usman Garuba, his inability to participate in Summer League and kind of speculating on what it means moving forward for this Rockets team. But coming up, I do want to talk about Donovan Mitchell, the news coming out of Utah that he is on the chopping block and that the Utah Jazz are listening to offers for him. Could the Rockets be a potential destination in a Donovan Mitchell trade? We're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at rockauto.com, because look, with just so many different makes and models of cars and trucks out there, it's basically impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you would need in a traditional chain storefront, right? You can save time and money when using rockauto.com. Why choose, right? Willingly choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the exact same parts from a chain store or car dealership. Best of all, Rock Auto is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers online for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every single customer. They don't price gouge you based on being a DIY person, which is how it should be, right? You shouldn't have to pay more just because you know how to do some repairs on your car or truck, right? They've got everything you could possibly need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even brand new carpet. So go explore their easy to use website and find the solution to your auto parts needs. And this is the really important part. When you go to check out at rockauto.com, be sure to write "Locked On" in their "How did you hear about us" box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Be sure to visit rockauto.com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's talk a little Donovan Mitchell on the chopping block in Utah. Look, as soon as the Utah Jazz dealt Rudy Gobert, I immediately was like, all right, when's the Woj tweet coming out that Donovan is next, right? And then, there was the little smoke screen of, oh no, the Jazz are, hell-bent on, taking these assets from the Rudy Gobert trade and retooling and rebuilding around Donovan Mitchell. And I didn't buy that for 2 seconds. I was like, no, Donovan's going to be on his way out. The Jazz are tanking this franchise. What did Danny Ainge do, right? The whole Brian Windhorst clip, right, that went viral, right? Now, why is that, right? Like, the whole Danny Ainge situation in Utah is like the last time he got the opportunity to do this, right? He sold off all the parts in Boston, hired a young head coach to a long contract, and that was that, right? Started completely fresh from the ground floor. That's what he's doing in Utah right now. He's setting himself up for a long-term success in Utah, and so he's going to go out there and source the best possible deal for Donovan Mitchell. Now, is Donovan Mitchell the type of star player that you feel comfortable with as Rockets fans, right? Would the Rockets feel comfortable in taking the draft capital from the Brooklyn Nets and lobbing it at a guy like Donovan Mitchell? Is a guy like Donovan Mitchell worth it? I think a guy of his caliber is absolutely worth, shedding some, if not all, of the Brooklyn Nets draft capital, because at the end of the day, right, you have those draft picks from Brooklyn in the hopes that you could grease the wheels on a trade for a player of Donovan Mitchell's caliber, or in the hopes that down the line, the Brooklyn Nets are bad enough, right, depending on the outcome of this Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving saga situation, whatever you want to call it. You hope that they are bad enough that these picks may convey in the form of top-end lottery talent, right? But that's not a guarantee at this point. And ultimately, with where the Rockets stand and where they're at, and depending on how this KD Kyrie situation plays out, if the Nets find a suitable trade partner or suitable trade package that gets them back some win now pieces, where suddenly we're not talking about those picks conveying in a big way for years to come, then it's not like the Rockets lost the trade per se, but those picks lose a ton of inherent value if the Brooklyn Nets get back some level of young talent that's exciting, that allows them, the ability to stay competitive out in the Eastern Conference. And this was a trade proposed by Bobby Marks, a 4-team deal that involves the Brooklyn Nets, the Phoenix Suns, the Indiana Pacers, and the Utah Jazz. And this would probably be worst case scenario if you're the Houston Rockets, where Donovan Mitchell, Mikal Bridges, and Miles Turner all end up in Brooklyn. The Phoenix Suns get Kevin Durant. The Indiana Pacers get DeAndre Ayton via sign and trade. And then the Utah Jazz walk away with Ben Simmons, Cam Thomas, 5 first-round picks, 4 of which from Phoenix, 1 from Cleveland via Indiana, and then 3 swap pick rights from Phoenix as well. So 5 firsts, 4 from Phoenix, and then 3 pick swaps, all from Phoenix. This is the type of trade that would absolutely ruin what the Rockets are hoping happens in Brooklyn with the instability of the KD Kyrie situation, because then a core centered around Donovan Mitchell, Mikal Bridges, and Miles Turner, with the pieces that they currently already have left over past that, that is a team that could easily be playing caliber or maybe even slightly better in the Eastern Conference for years to come, right? That's a young, talented core. And if they put the right pieces around them, that could be a really good team for a long time. They don't exactly have draft capital to make that work, to add other pieces, to trade for other established talent. But that type of trade permutation would really completely throw a wrench in what the Rockets are hoping happens in Brooklyn, in the way that they may, trade Kevin Durant straight up 1-for-1 deal to a team like the Phoenix Suns and get back only draft capital, right? Or involve a third team in some capacity, which is why I think that the situation is so intriguing for the Houston Rockets, because from their perspective, right, they have a ton of leverage in having the Brooklyn Nets draft picks, right? So either A, I feel like the Rockets desperately need to get back involved with Brooklyn to either like give Brooklyn their own picks for an established star of some caliber in the KD trade themselves, or maybe they offload those picks before some type of trade goes down to where the future of those picks don't look nearly as, right now they look pretty good. But in a month from now, if a trade like that goes down with the Brooklyn Nets and they pick up a bunch of young talent, then suddenly those picks don't look anywhere near as good, right? We're back to square one of those picks looking like they're going to be predominantly late first, give or take, late, not lottery type talent. And that's really frustrating if you're a Rockets fan after we've kind of run some victory laps on what this KD situation was going to look like, myself included. I ran plenty of victory laps. So if you're the Houston Rockets, would you be able to benefit from trading for a guy like Donovan Mitchell right now? I'm torn. I think that Donovan Mitchell is an amazing talent, and I do think that he could potentially thrive in Houston alongside the rest of these young pieces that the Rockets have. And what's even more exciting about it is the Rockets could, right? Donovan Mitchell, the one hang up on him, right? He's a bit of an undersized guard. But if you were to run like Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Porter Jr., and Jalen Green, like a 3-guard lineup at the 1, 2, 3 spot, like KPJ and Jalen Green have enough length and size that, another year or two in the NBA, right, bulking up a little bit more, I don't think that would necessarily be an issue having those guys check opposing threes on the wing, because the NBA is kind of trending, I don't want to say trending down in size, but like I feel like you can get away with 3 guards on the perimeter if Donovan Mitchell's able to check like the smallest other player on the team, or you just, you hide Donovan Mitchell on whoever the weakest link offensively is for the opposing team, and then you put KPJ, who's grown quite a bit as a defender, on whoever you need to check offensively. The second best offensive player, you put Jabari on the best offensive player, and then you put Jalen on the third best offensive player, right? You can still get things done defensively if that were the case. But, the framework for the Houston Rockets, what would that look like, right? Is Donovan Mitchell worth, 4 firsts and 3 swaps outright? I don't think so, right? Is he worth close to that? I think that a lot of people are trying to say that Rudy Gobert kind of set the market or set the precedent for what a star player gets traded for this offseason. I also think the Timberwolves were kind of desperate to make that move. And I think that Danny Ainge kind of fleeced the Wolves in that capacity. So I don't think Donovan Mitchell is going to net quite the same return, but he's still going to cost a ton to move out of Utah. And ultimately, is right now the right time for the Houston Rockets to pounce on the available star, right? Because we've talked about this for close to 18 months now, right? This entire trade, all these picks, the idea behind them is it gives you the opportunity to leverage if there's an available disgruntled star, right? Somebody who wants out of an organization or somebody that an organization is willing to part with. It gives you that opportunity to be in the prime position to pounce on that target. Is Donovan Mitchell that guy for the Houston Rockets? I'm going to ultimately say no this go around, but it's like a soft no, because, right, like, again, if a trade happens in a month and suddenly the Nets are going to be in prime position to be a competitive team, high play-in, low playoff seed, somewhere in the 5 to 8 range, then the Rockets could really be kicking themselves if they don't capitalize on what these picks look like they're going to be worth right now, while there's still uncertainty about the Brooklyn Nets' future. So I'm torn on it. Donovan Mitchell feels like he's the first, disgruntled young star player that's become available on the market since the Rockets have had these picks. And I just don't know if he's the right guy to pounce on, right? Because what if, 3 to 6 months from now, there's another guy who wants out, who makes even more sense for the Houston Rockets, somebody who fits a little bit better, who matches the other pieces that the Rockets have. Because if you look at the Rockets' long-term starting 5 as at least 4 of the pieces locked in with KPJ, Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and Jabari Smith, then ideally you want a 5th player who kind of directly complements that core group of guys, rather than somebody that you kind of have to have some question marks about how the fit would effectively look, like Donovan Mitchell, right? If you were to run permanently a 3-guard set with Donovan Mitchell, KPJ, Jalen Green. So that's kind of just some initial thoughts on the Donovan Mitchell situation. Obviously, we've got to stay very wired in on what this situation looks like, because if the Utah Jazz get involved in a KD trade in any capacity and Donovan Mitchell finds himself in Brooklyn, then that is bad news for the Houston Rockets. So with that, want to talk about some of the wing depth that the Rockets have on their roster right now as it relates to guys like Tari Eason, Jae'Sean Tate, KJ Martin, Eric Gordon in that mix as well as an effective wing player for this Houston Rockets roster. We're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline. Because look, betonline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball season. They've also got you covered for all the fighting on, MMA, UFC, boxing, you name it. They've got it over at BetOnline. They've got golf. They've got everything you could possibly imagine over at BetOnline. It remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news. They've got you for live betting, esports, all of it. And right now, you can even take a look right now at the futures for who are the odds-on favorite to win the NBA championship this next season. Surprisingly, the Golden State Warriors, not the favorites to repeat this next season. Right now, Boston Celtics are plus 600. You got the Milwaukee Bucks also at plus 600, so tied for first place. Phoenix Suns at plus 650, Golden State Warriors down in fourth place at plus 700, and then rounding out the top five, also tied with the Warriors, plus 700, are the LA Clippers, John Wall's new home. So for all of that and more odds, head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And final segment here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. I came to the realization that as I was teasing up this segment at the end of last segment, I completely omitted Jabari Smith's name from like the wings or the forwards on the Rockets roster. And that's because I'm an idiot. I mean, I am an idiot, but like, that's not why, because he's a lock. Like, he's going to get his minutes regardless. The question marks are the rest of the guys who kind of slot into the wing role for this Houston Rockets roster. And so I'm curious, I wanted to do kind of an early, very, very early, way too early preliminary look at what the Rockets wing rotation would potentially look like. And there is a distinct shortage of minutes on this Rockets roster. Guys are going to get squeezed. And so even before it looked like the KJ Martin, trade request thing is pretty legitimate in the fact that, first off, KJ was out there, right, in Vegas Summer League supporting the guys. Nobody was like alienating him, right? He's still tight with everybody. Like, I don't think that's an issue, right? There's no bad blood on either side between KJ and his teammates, whatever. I think this is just KJ Martin's dad, chirping in his ear saying, you deserve this and you're my son and go do that, right? Like that kind of thing. But with that, if we look at the Rockets roster as such, right, as presently constructed, Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green should be getting anywhere, like, we'll say 32 minutes a night for those two guys, right? And let's say Jabari and Alp are also getting about 30 minutes a night. We'll benchmark Jabari at 30 minutes a night flat, right? So that gives another 18 minutes at the other forward spot. And Alp, 30 minutes a night, that gives another 18 minutes at the backup center spot. I'm doing all this math, and which I'm already throwing out so many numbers, which means this segment's going to be an absolute train wreck, guaranteed. But when you look at the guard spots first, right? If KPJ and Jalen are both rocking 32 minutes a night, that leaves an extra 16 minutes behind both of them. That's effectively 32 minutes at the backup 1 and 2 spot for the Rockets. If Josh Christopher takes about 18 to 20 of those minutes, that leaves anywhere from 12 to 14 minutes a night for either Daishen Nix or Ty Washington to play. I do think that one of those two guys, and I'm leaning Daishen Nix right now, is going to absorb a big chunk of those minutes. The Rockets are very proud of their G League developmental program. They like sending guys down there to get acclimated and to get some legitimate run before rolling them into the rotation significantly at the NBA level. And I do think that, again, maybe Ty starts out playing Daishen Nix. Maybe training camp is super competitive and he earns that spot ahead of Daishen Nix. Cool. Right now, that backup point guard spot, getting 10 to 12 minutes a night, 12 to 14, whatever it is, that belongs to Daishen Nix currently. So those are your effective guard minutes for the Rockets. I don't think EG is going to play a ton of guard minutes this next season. I think effectively EG played a lot this past season as a wing alongside Jalen and KPJ for a majority of some of these games. He played some minutes at the guard spot, but I do expect that to kind of shift and change a little bit this next season quite a bit. So with that, we go to the 3 spot now, right? And that's where the big question mark is who's going to be A, who's going to be the starting 3 for the Rockets, B, how are the minutes going to be shifted around at that 3 spot, and then who's going to see who is going to get squeezed for their overall minutes. Because if you've got 48 minutes at the 3 spot and you've got another 18 minutes backing up Jabari Smith, that gives you 66 minutes. I knew the math was going to get bad. That gives you 66 minutes across the game to allocate to guys like Jae'Sean Tate, Tari Eason, KJ Martin, Garrison Matthews, and Eric Gordon. That's 5 names. That's 5 names, and you've got 66 minutes across those 5 names. Now, granted, again, there are some minutes, maybe you lob in an extra 10 minutes, right, of playing super duper small ball behind Alperen Sengun, right? Maybe Usman Garuba gets 10 to 12 minutes a night, and you've got another 8 to 10 minutes behind him to, play whatever, mega small ball with Jabari at the 5 or Tari at the 5 or Jae'Sean, somebody, right? I think that right now, that list of 5 names, Jae'Sean Tate, Tari Eason, KJ Martin, Eric Gordon, and Garrison Matthews, the 2 guys that I think are going to get shorted on that list currently are actually Garrison Matthews and probably KJ Martin. And I say that because Garrison Matthews, while he brings shooting to the table, and the Rockets desperately needed that, and Garrison Matthews translates to winning because he can shoot the ball so damn well. He's kind of a nightmare defensively. Like, he's had moments where he's been able to break up some plays and he hustles and he gets some charges here and there, right? But he's not a great defensive player. And so I think that when you look at the archetype of players that the Rockets are kind of, molding this roster around, having a defensive weak link like Garrison Matthews out there makes everybody else on the roster susceptible, because you're only as strong as the weakest link in your defense, especially when you're a young, inexperienced team like the Rockets. So if they have one weak individual defender out there on the floor, that's barbecue chicken for anybody that's trying to, take him one-on-one or whatever, then it's going to weaken your overall entire defense. And that's not what I think the Rockets are going for this upcoming season with the types of players that they're bringing in, with adding personnel like Lionel Hollins, et cetera, right? Maybe Garrison gets some spot minutes here and there as like a, shooting specialist, bring him in. If he's hot, right, microwave scorer off the bench, get him a couple threes, cool, right? 5 minutes a night. If he's got it, cool, he gets more burn. If he doesn't have it, you bench him for the rest of the game. Maybe that's his role. But I think him and then KJ Martin, who through a couple years now, right, like KJ hasn't exactly shown a ton of, like, he's grown and he's still talented, and I think the potential is absolutely through the roof. And I think my most favorite part of his development has been the fact that he's got the 3-ball down and what seems like to be a very, very consistent shot. But elsewhere, he just doesn't have much of a bag. Like, when you look at him offensively, right, the dribble is not quite there, hasn't gotten there yet, doesn't have a ton of creation ability. He can attack off the catch a little bit, right? And in transition, when he can get a lob, right, get going to the rim, full head of steam, like he's had some finishes. But when you look at what other guys can do in the rotation ahead of him, the skill set that they bring to the table, Tari Eason's already a better 3 than KJ Martin, period. I feel very comfortable saying that. Jae'Sean Tate brings so much more versatility to the lineup that KJ Martin doesn't. The only thing KJ Martin has on Jae'Sean Tate is the shooting numbers right now. I think Jae'Sean Tate effectively brings you defense, brings you playmaking, brings you leadership, brings you intangibles, gives you all of that, right? So I think Jae'Sean Tate has him beat out as well. And then I think ultimately, and this is the one that's going to be kind of divisive amongst Rockets fans, Eric Gordon, right? If he's still on this roster, I feel like EG is going to be either at least starting or play a significant role, like 20, 25 minutes a night for this Rockets team, because Eric Gordon translates to winning basketball, right? Eric Gordon, having him on the floor alongside guys like Jalen and KPJ, he is the perfect vet to have alongside those guys because he doesn't require the basketball in his hands. He spaces the floor for you. He plays good defense when he wants to. And I feel like the Rockets, I don't want to say that they owe it to KPJ and Jalen Green, but if they really want to see what this group can do and maybe see if the talent on this roster can translate to some wins, you need to have guys who can play winning basketball. You need to have guys who aren't just young guys out there on the floor. And I'm not saying you cover the roster in vets. I'm just saying having a guy out there like EG, so that if KPJ and Jalen Green are playing basketball to the best of their ability, right? If they're playing incredible basketball, playmaking at a high level, scoring at a high level, making the right reads, facilitating for their teammates, you want to have guys out there who can hit shots, right? You want to have guys out there who can defend at a high level and help Jalen and KPJ win some basketball games if they're doing what they need to be doing on the floor. If you have a rookie out there who doesn't exactly know what's going on, or if you have a guy out there who can't shoot the ball, like then, when KPJ, sauces and then whips up a dime for this guy and he bricks the shot, then you're frustrated, right? Or if the game's on the line and you've got somebody out there who can't defend at a high level, and KPJ and Jalen Green have powered you through this game and you can't win because you can't close things out on the final possession, you want to have a guy out there who can do that. And I think that EG is that guy still. And I think that's, he's been bought into the rebuild, bought into teaching these young guys. And so having him around, whether he starts or whether he comes off the bench, having him around is a total luxury for this Rockets team to be able to put a talented basketball player like that next to Jalen and KPJ so that they can experience what it's like playing with other talented basketball players who can help them win games, right? Don't mean to punch my microphone stand. I'm like Tari Eason. I'm so animated with my hands when I'm talking. I'm like hitting all this crap next to me. No. So I think right now, I think the two guys on the short list to get squeezed for minutes, unfortunately, are KJ Martin and Garrison Matthews. And even though of the group of guys that I just listed, they are arguably the second and third best shooters of that group, right? Depending on how you view Eric Gordon and the fact that he's kind of, a volume shooter, somewhat inconsistent from three, has his ups and downs, streaky, whatever you want to call it, right? I'd go ahead and call Eric Gordon the best shooter of that bunch. That's kind of that's where I struggle with it, right? Because shooting is so important at the NBA level. Maybe I'm completely off base here. Maybe it does matter, the fact that those guys can shoot the basketball better than those other two, than Jae'Sean Tate and Tari Eason. Again, we're optimistically hopeful that Jae'Sean Tate has revamped and worked on his shot to where he gets it to a point that it's much more consistent on the floor. Hopefully that holds true. We'll see once we get to training camp, and we'll see once we get an actual glimpse at what Jae'Sean Tate brings to the table. And then Tari Eason. Tari's been playing out of his mind in Summer League. Like the Rockets, completely, again, we may look back on this, a year or two, 5 years from now and think that the Rockets absolutely got the steal of the draft at 17 with Tari Eason, because he's playing like a freaking lottery talent at this point. And the three ball has looked solid. Like for what the Rockets ask of him to do, right? They don't need him to be able to, cross up somebody and pull up from three and hit step backs. They just need him to sit in the corner and hit wide open threes when the ball is kicked out to him. And for the most part, he's been able to do that in Summer League, right? He had the very first game where he shot 2 of 9. And I think that was him just being a little tad aggressive offensively. But once he settled in games 2 and 3, he looked perfect. He looked like every bit what you want at that 3 spot next to Jabari Smith, next to Alperen Sengun, next to guys like Jalen and KPJ. And at this point, I'm not ready to say that it's going to happen. But Tari Eason could very legitimately be starting for the Houston Rockets at some point this next season. I think I even said that in the last pod, right? Talking about how good Tari Eason looked. And it's true, right? It still holds true in this very next episode, is Tari Eason could be vying for that starting spot. I think right now, smart money is on Eric Gordon if he's still with the Houston Rockets, playing 20 to 25 minutes a night, and then you divvy up the rest of those minutes between guys like Jae'Sean Tate and Tari Eason, right? Remember the first number that we threw out there when I was doing math terribly was 66 minutes, right? 66 minutes across the backup 4 spot behind Jabari and then the starting 3 spot. And I think you've effectively got 3 names that are going to be the clear-cut 3 guys out of the 5 that we listed who deserve those minutes, and it's going to be E.G., Tari Eason, and Jae'Sean Tate. So you've got 66 minutes to divide across 3 guys. That's 22 minutes per guy. That's not a ton of time, right? So I do think that, maybe you shift it around a little bit. Maybe Jae'Sean Tate gets somewhere in the 25 minutes a night. Maybe E.G. gets 20 to 25 minutes. And then a guy like Tari comes in and gets, anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes a night. And that feels like a decent balance across those 3 names. And then situationally, if there's a little bit more burn to be had, right? Maybe if Alp, needs backup time, maybe Usman Garuba isn't being super effective one night, maybe they want to play small, then that's when you go a little bit further into the rotation for a guy like KJ Martin or Garrison Matthews. But I think those 2 guys are going to have to show the Rockets something really, really special over the summer and throughout training camp to be able to earn a spot in the rotation ahead of the other 3 guys that I just listed off. So with that, those are final thoughts on Josh Christopher and Usman Garuba being out for what it means for the rest of the Rockets roster, Donovan Mitchell as a possible trade target, and how he impacts the whole Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant saga. And then, of course, the Rockets wing depth, the new added wing depth, right out of nowhere. It seems like they went from having no wings to having a million wings overnight, and what that potentially looks like going into next season, the skills, the minutes distribution, all of that. So with that, appreciate you for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, brand new Odyssey app, free and available on all platforms. We're also on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Bye.